Hey guys, tonight we're going to imagine something strange and strangely peaceful, a world where every single human being has suddenly disappeared. No explosions, no chaos, just poof. 1 second you are scrolling on your phone, and the next it slips to the floor. Cities hum for a beat confused. Elevators stop mid-floors. Planes, well, let's not think too hard about what happens to those. But the world, it doesn't panic. It just exhales. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is over there. I love seeing the little constellation of sleepy science lovers across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first few minutes are eerie. Somewhere in Tokyo, a coffee still steams on a windowsill. In Los Angeles, a green pedestrian light blinks on but no one crosses. Hospitals beep with no one to hear. You can almost picture the earth squinting, tilting slightly on its axis, wondering why the buzzing has stopped. And just like that, your absence begins to matter in ways no one ever imagined. Without people to drive them, cars stall in intersections. Without fingers to type them, texts go unsent. Without maintenance, the world's delicate machine starts to unwind. The International Space Station is still overhead, gliding silently, its crew gone. Satellites whiz by, still functional for now. But on the surface, the great engines of civilization sputter into stillness. Coal plants run out of fuel. Wind turbines still spin, and solar panels still soak up the sun until grime and dust start to coat them. Within hours, electricity grids begin to shut down. Power outages sweep across continents like slow-moving shadows. One by one, cities go dark. This is when things get wet. Subway systems like those in London and New York have always battled the groundwater beneath. Normally, pumps keep the tunnels dry, but with no one to manage them. Within 2 to 3 days, pumps fail. Water begins seeping in. It's not dramatic at first, just puddles, but give it a week, and the trains are underwater. Graffiti, fishless aquariums. The pets you left behind are confused. The first ones to suffer are those most dependent goldfish in bowls, parakeets in cages. Dogs linger by doors. Cats, well, they start hunting. Within days, your living room turns into a micro-wilderness. And those high-rise office plants, most of them die. But a few hardy ones, your weird cactus that forgotten pothos, start their quiet, chlorophyll-fueled conquest. You'd be surprised how quickly nature notices you're gone. Raccoons venture deeper into town. Foxes cross highways. In India, monkeys ransack markets left full of drying fruit. Pigeons take over office buildings, while in Australia kangaroos hop through shopping malls with unsettling ease. You always suspected they'd do this. Remember Chernobyl? That ghost city gave us a preview. After humans left, wild boar bears and even lynx reclaimed the area. Some scientists argue whether the absence of humans is more beneficial to wildlife than any conservation effort we've attempted. A grim compliment, really. Meanwhile, alarms keep beeping in data centers until batteries drain. Smart fridges hum quietly until the grid fails. Your Roomba, programmed to clean every Tuesday, makes one final lap around the dustless living room, then dies beside the couch. Up in the sky, jetliners left pilotless eventually run out of fuel and crash in unceremonious spots. A few glide into open fields, others don't. And somewhere, probably over Nebraska, a cargo plane gently drops dozens of flat-screen TVs into a deserted cornfield. Nobody watches. Historical fact. During the 14th century Black Death in Europe, entire villages vanished. Nature moved in, just like now. The forests that grew during that time cooled the climate for years. Some historians believe this minor human pause helped trigger the Little Ice Age. So it doesn't take much absence to change a planet. On the fringe side, there's a niche theory. Borderline conspiracy, really, that Earth's consciousness notices humanity's presence. That the planet is more alive, more reactive when observed. If that's true, it must be feeling oddly calm right now. And as calm settles in, something else happens. Time gets weird. Because now the Earth moves on its own rhythm. No school bells, no meetings, no checkout lines, just the slow, steady turning of a planet, shrugging off its clingy +1. By the end of the first day, the skies are eerily clear. Planes are gone. Car exhaust, done. The air for once smells like nothing, which ironically is probably the nicest thing it's smelled in a century. And in the great stillness, the sun sets not over civilization, but over a reset. A quiet you can't undo. A silence that sticks. The first week without you is a strange unfolding of neglect, like someone forgot to close the lid on civilization and walked away. It's not dramatic at first. The world doesn't explode. Its size then starts to sag. With no humans left to care for them, power grids across the globe finally fizzle out completely. Power plants require regular oversight valves to adjust fuel, to refuel pressure, to monitor. Once the automated systems reach their limits, everything grinds to a halt. Nuclear reactors shut themselves down gracefully, well, most of them. The newer ones are built with passive safety features. But a few older plants, they start to sweat. Not explode yet, but simmer in the shadows, slowly heating up their last sigh of warning lights. Meanwhile, the world gets dark. Like pre-1879, dark. Cities lose their glow, replaced by a kind of soft blackness, broken only by the moon, the stars, and the occasional flickering emergency light. And those lights, they're running on backup batteries. They don't last long. The night sky comes alive in a way you've never seen. In major cities, you would have had to squint to make out 5 stars. Now, you could see the Milky Way spilling across the sky like powdered sugar. In fact, it might remind you of the blackout in Los Angeles in 1994, when people called 911 reporting a weird, glowing cloud overhead. It was just the galaxy hiding in plain sight. On the streets, it's chaos, but a very polite, natural sort. Domesticated animals are confused. Dogs bark in empty cul-de-sacs, waiting for doors that won't open. Some eventually escape and form feral packs. Cats. Oh, cats are fine. They've been waiting for this. Zoo animals, though. That's tougher. Some enclosures are breached by clever primates or toppled by hungry elephants. Others stay locked, quietly starving. It's not a Disney movie. It's just quiet suffering. Still, some zookeepers left automatic feeding systems in place. A few lucky giraffes nibble hay one last time before wandering into suburban backyards. Imagine looking out your second-story window and locking eyes with a giraffe on your trampoline. Not likely, but hey, stranger things. Water becomes both savior and destroyer now. Without human intervention, reservoirs overflow. Irrigation channels clog. Levees, especially in places like the Netherlands and New Orleans, no longer receive maintenance. Within a week or two, rivers reclaim their floodplains. Suburbs in Sacramento marshland. Parts of Bangkok drowned. Venice. Well, Venice was already halfway there, but the most surreal scenes unfold underground. Subway systems, long kept dry by tireless pumping stations, surrender to the water table. In New York, entire train lines become slow-motion canals. Rats scurry upward, relocating to street level. Some drown, some thrive. And in Paris, the catacombs flood bones dissolving into silent soup. Then, there are the buildings. Skyscrapers still stand for now, but without climate control, mold blooms like bad wallpaper. Glass fogs with condensation, and inside the air becomes heavy. Museums, those climate-controlled treasure boxes, fare slightly better. Mona Lisa watches the dust settle, but with no one to change filters or seal doors, even she begins to flake. One historical truth here in Detroit after its population collapsed in the late 20th century, entire neighborhoods were abandoned. Nature wasted no time. Trees split through pavement. Foxes nested in school lockers. And vines found every cracked window like it was a formal invitation. So it's not hypothetical. It's a preview. Fringe theories. Some argue Earth has a memory for ecological balance, a kind of self-righting mechanism. A human free world might activate this weird planetary autopilot. Whether that's poetic or pseudoscientific scientists still argue whether ecosystems can truly heal in your absence, or if they'll just collapse more slowly. The air begins to clear. With no cars, no factories, and no barbecues, pollution drops dramatically. Within days, skies over Delhi, Beijing, and LA become a shocking shade of blue. The kind of blue that makes birds fly higher just to show off. And those birds, they're having a moment. With no planes overhead, no loud concerts, no exploding fireworks, they start to sing like it's spring every day. Their calls echo through empty parking lots and half-flooded stadiums. A mockingbird lands on home plate at Fenway Park and performs the entire chorus of a Beyoncé song it heard last July. Insects, too, surge. Without pesticides and nightly porch lights luring them to their doom, moths flutter in greater numbers. Beetles reclaim forest floors. Mosquitoes, well, yeah, they come back too. Sorry. Meanwhile, coastal cities brace for their slow unraveling. Places like Miami and Shanghai are already in danger from rising seas. Without human-built defenses, salt water begins to push inland. Sewage systems back up. Mangroves creep forward. And homes turn into swamps where bullfrogs croak and snakes coil beneath ceiling fans. Inside your old apartment, the food in your fridge is now green and fluffy. The bananas have liquefied. The milk has become cheese, then soup, then possibly sentient. No one is coming to clean it up. The air is musty. A possum is living in your laundry basket now. A light joke, but you probably wouldn't want to come back just yet. Above it all, satellites continue to orbit. Some begin drifting as gyroscopes fail. Eventually, they'll fall. But not yet. For now, they still beam down data no one is there to collect. They've become cosmic whispers, ghosts of our once busy chatter. And through it all, Earth rotates on. The sun rises even if no one sets an alarm. The moon pulls the tides even if no one's surfing. Life doesn't stop. It just reroutes, quietly, casually. And just like that, your absence becomes the most powerful presence of all. By the time a full month has passed, the world has started to forget you. Not with bitterness or any grand erasure, just casually. the same way a sidewalk forgets every footstep. Or how your browser forgets you once clicked accept cookies. Nature doesn't mourn. It reclaims, and by now, it's growing bold. Vines snake through broken windows of once locked buildings. Roots tear at driveways, eager for a crack to wedge in. Lawns uncut surge past knee-height, then waist. Flowers bloom wildly, no longer confined to planters. Ivy climbs gas stations. Moss spreads over statues. And trees, oh, the trees start winning their slow war against asphalt. You'd barely recognize most neighborhoods. In just 30 days, they've become curious mashups of human symmetry and organic chaos. Like if Pinterest had a feral phase. Deer begin to wander further into towns. They nose around playgrounds and graze beside overturned mailboxes. Coyotes lope through shopping centers with a casual confidence as if they've always belonged. In some parts of the world, monkeys run riot through open-air markets. Peacocks roost on rooftops. An ostrich struts into a bank lobby and peers into a security mirror completely unbothered. Historical truth. When people evacuated the Korean demilitarized zone, wildlife flourished. Endangered species like the Amur leopard and Korean tiger appeared again, as if summoned by silence. Scientists still argue whether removing humans or introducing conservation zones is more effective, but the DMZ offers a compelling case for just leaving things alone. And the animals aren't the only ones changing their behavior. With no humans around, your domesticated plants get weird. Most indoor ones die quickly without watering, especially the high-maintenance divas like orchids. But outside, hybrid decorative plants begin competing with native species. Some lose, others adapt. A few break the rules entirely. You ever seen a rose bush swallow a mailbox? Give it time. On the edge of town, farmland begins reverting. Without tilling or seeding, soil shifts. Wheat and corn sprout one last generation. From leftover seed, then begin mixing with the wild. Heirloom tomatoes go feral. Potatoes rot underground. And somewhere a pumpkin grows wild and huge in an abandoned Walmart parking lot, as if trying to summon Halloween without permission. No fences are fixed. No tractors run. And the irrigation systems. They sputter out as pipes burst and wells run dry. Cows wander off. Chickens, now free from coops, scatter to the winds. Some become fox food. Others, surprisingly, thrive. There's a fringe belief that domesticated animals are helpless without us. And sure, chihuahuas probably aren't making a strong comeback. But pigs. Pigs remember how to root, how to forage, how to get mean. Within weeks, they start resembling their wild boar ancestors. Again, bristly tusked and thoroughly done with your Instagram habits. Elsewhere, the slow failure of human structures accelerates. Glass skyscrapers become glittering greenhouses of mold and condensation. Without climate control, humidity builds. Drywall warps. Ceilings collapse under the weight of collected rainwater and mildew. Office chairs rot. Server rooms sweat themselves into silence. Bridges begin to creak. You know that iconic photo of the Golden Gate Bridge always shining in that surreal rust-orange hue? That's thanks to constant painting and upkeep. Without it, salt air and moisture go to work. Rust blooms on support cables. Bolts corrode. Eventually, the cables snap years from now, but it starts now, in tiny chemical betrayals. Quiet, persistent oxidation. In your old neighborhood, the power lines have collapsed under the weight of climbing vines and fallen limbs. Traffic lights hang limp, blinking nonsense. A family of squirrels has nested inside a smart car. There's moss growing on your kitchen sponge, and the insects are loving it. Termites flourish in the dark, damp interiors of empty homes. Cockroach colonies expand with terrifying efficiency. But even more fascinating bees begin to reappear. With no pesticides, no light pollution, and no humans accidentally crushing their hives, pollinators make a comeback. Orchards in California begin to buzz again, though no one's left to harvest the fruit. Fringe theory. Time, some ecologists believe bees have emotional intelligence, the ability to sense stress or calm in the environment. No one agrees entirely. Scientists still argue whether it's real cognition or just adaptive behavior. But if bees could sense emotion, they'd probably find this new world oddly peaceful. Aquatic life gets a break too. Riverbanks clogged by plastic bags begin to clear. Fish return to urban waterways. In Venice, canals sparkle again. Algae blooms fade without fertilizer runoff. And coral reefs, previously bleached by warming oceans, start recovering in slow, patient colors. In the Pacific, the so-called Great Garbage Patch still swirls a monument to the old world's convenience. Plastic bottles and flip-flops float in quiet spirals, waiting for the microbes that might in a few hundred years evolve to eat them. Maybe. Birds are nesting in traffic cams now. Bats have moved into church belfries. An alligator is sunning itself in a hotel pool. And your house, it's falling into a kind of peaceful chaos. Paint peels in great curling flakes. Your couch smells like mildew. A raccoon has built a little nest in the dryer. It sleeps there during the day, belly up, gently snoring. But here's the strangest part. It doesn't feel post-apocalyptic. It feels reclaimed, like the world isn't mourning your absence. It's just stretching its limbs. It's been a year now. A full cycle of seasons, storms, and silence. And without a single calendar to track it, Earth keeps perfect time. Your absence is no longer felt, it's assumed. Grass grows freely across airport runways. Rust streaks down the sides of office towers, and the wind whistles through hollow suburbs like it's searching for something that isn't coming back. There are no footprints in the snow, no exhaust trails in the sky, no birthday candles, no microwave beeps, no karaoke Fridays, just weather birdsong and decay, with no human caretakers. Mechanical systems all over the planet begin their final quiet failures. Hydroelectric dams, slow as debris, clogs intakes. Wind turbines stall without lubrication. Solar panels, those symbols of futuristic optimism, are now coated with a layer of dust and bird droppings. They still work technically, but like a hungover robot doing the bare minimum. The electrical grid is long gone. But something far more dangerous is still holding on nuclear power plants. Most modern reactors shut down safely without human input, designed to enter passive cooling modes. But some older plants, especially ones built in the mid-20th century, require supervision. Without it, cooling ponds begin to evaporate. Fuel rods overheat. And somewhere in Eastern Europe or the American Midwest, containment fails. No mushroom clouds, no Hollywood fireballs, just slow, invisible releases. Cesium, strontium, iodine, all creeping into soil and rivers. The zones nearby become dead again. Not with fire, but with stillness. Chernobyl 2.0, but this time nobody's watching. Scientists still argue whether the long-term risk of nuclear fallout outweighs the damage we've done with fossil fuels. One poisons quickly and quietly, the other slowly and loudly. But now both are paused. And earth bruised, but breathing begins to recover in strange and unexpected places. Back in the cities, time has become visible. Buildings now wear the months like wrinkles. Windows have cracked from heat and cold. Water has seeped into every crevice. Metal rusts in brilliant oranges. Paint peels off in soft sheets. Some streets have buckled, warped by root systems, pushing up from below. Parking garages collapse under their own damp weight. Nature isn't just returning, it's renovating. In places like Tokyo, Delhi, or Sao Paulo, entire sections of cityscape have become vertical jungles. Vines crawl up apartment towers. Ferns grow from elevator shafts. Pigeons build nests in security cameras. Somewhere a bear climbs a broken escalator. Remember how Central Park once felt like nature inside the city. Now, it feels like the city inside nature. One historical echo here, after the fall of the Roman Empire. Cities like Pompeii, Ephesus, and Carthage slowly vanished under vines, soil, and volcanic ash. They disappeared not in explosions but in inches. Forgotten then, discovered centuries later beneath someone's goat farm. You're living through that cycle again, except now it's everywhere. Even underwater, the transformation has begun. Ships left floating at anchor have started to sink. Barnacles, algae, and coral colonize hulls. Oil rigs rust their skeletal frames, becoming artificial reefs. Dolphins return to oil fields. Octopuses explore shipping containers. A scuba diver's dream if there were any scuba divers left. But one of the strangest sights appears along the coastlines. Sand takes over. Beaches grow. Without seawalls constantly reshaped by heavy machinery, the natural flow of tides reasserts itself. Barrier islands shift. Sandbars migrate. And some coastal towns once clinging to the edge are now buried under dunes and broken piers. Inland dams begin to fail. Hoover Dam holds for now. But silt buildup and unchecked erosion slowly wear it down. When it finally cracks decades from now, it won't roar. It will groan, give, and then collapse in one glorious silent avalanche of concrete and water. In California's Central Valley farmland returns to swamp. Orchards drown, roads dissolve. Old fruit trees sag under the weight of unharvested bounty. Rotting apples, fermented peaches, sour plums becoming meals for everything, from bees to black bears. And speaking of fruit, some of it is going wild. Bananas from genetic clones start mutating. Without controlled breeding, new varieties emerge. Mango trees spread from abandoned backyards. Watermelons burst open in the sun. Somewhere in Brazil, a watermelon crosses with a pumpkin, and no one is there to name it. There's a quirky fringe idea called plant consciousness, the theory that plants can sense and respond to human emotion or attention. Not widely accepted, obviously. But if plants were waiting for us to stop touching them, this is their moment. Meanwhile, human-made objects are beginning to fragment. Plastic breaks into smaller pieces but never truly disappears. Microplastics swirl in lakes, drift into Arctic snow, and nestle inside the bones of fish and birds. Even without you, your legacy remains in every riverbed and shoreline. A strange, shimmering footprint. In some areas, solar-powered billboards still flicker at dusk, ghosts in the machine. One of them loops a shampoo, ad its model frozen mid-hair flip. Beneath it, a family of goats eats the grass growing through cracked pavement. And then there's your stuff. Your clothes have faded. Elastic has snapped. Polyester persists, but leather has cracked and peeled. Books warp and rot unless they're kept dry. Laptops swell as batteries corrode. Photos curl and fuse into their frames. Your favorite coffee mug is now filled with rainwater and mosquito larvae. But your bones, those will last. Not all of them. Not in every case, but the densest ones, like your femur or jaw, might survive centuries. Deep in a cave sealed in sediment, they could fossilize. And 1,000,000 years from now, something with fingers might dig them up. Maybe it wonders who you were. Or maybe it just uses your skull as a flower pot. For now, though, the wind still blows. The trees still sway. And in this quiet, post-human Earth life continues not in mourning, but in motion. 10 years without a single human, and Earth is starting to look like something out of a dream. Or maybe a hallucination, familiar shapes now coated in green, half swallowed by time. The skeletons of your city still stand, but nature is gutting them from the inside out. Roads have cracked wide open. Tree roots bulge beneath the asphalt, splitting it like an eggshell. In some places, rivers have rerouted entirely, carving through old parking lots, overflowing into schoolyards, turning sports fields into seasonal wetlands. Basketball hoops still stand, but now they're covered in moss and herons perch on the rims. Gas stations overgrown. Their signs faded to pastel ghosts, numbers stuck on the last price of fuel you'll never need again. The pumps rust in place. Inside the mini-mart, candy bars have melted into geological strata. A wasp nest hums in the ice cream freezer. And buildings, they're folding in on themselves. Roofs have caved in. Floors buckle under the weight of rot. Mold eats through drywall like it's on a gourmet diet. A tree has grown up through the floor of a church sanctuary, splitting the pews like toothpicks. Stained glass shatters from temperature shifts. Crosses tilt. And all the while the wind whistles hymns no one hears. Do you remember malls? Indoor shopping temples filled with smells and soft pop music. They've become terrariums. Sunlight filters in through broken skylights. Weeds climb escalators frozen mid-step. A fox gives birth in the lingerie department of a former department store. Nearby, a snake suns itself on a pile of expired coupons. In the countryside, things are even stranger. Fences collapse. Barns crumble. Fields turn to wildflower meadows. Wild horses roam their hooves echoing across long-forgotten freeways. An abandoned tractor becomes a mossy hill. Somewhere in Kansas, a storm shelter is now home to a colony of armadillos. Back in the cities, the concrete is eroding. Not fast, but steadily. Rain and freeze-thaw cycles work like silent chisels, flaking away at sidewalks and bridges. Steel rebar inside buildings begins to corrode, expanding, cracking the very structures they were meant to strengthen. It's called spalling, and once it starts, it doesn't stop. Historical fact. After just 10 years of abandonment in Pripyat, near the Chernobyl disaster site, buildings had already begun collapsing from water damage and vegetation pressure. That was with radiation slowing some biological decay. In your world, it's happening faster. Elevators are death traps now. If you somehow stepped into one, you'd fall through rusted cables. Staircases are buckling. Basements are flooded. Offices are graveyards for last year's trends. Rusted, standing desks curled motivational posters, forgotten vision boards covered in algae. Even the high-tech stuff fails quietly. Fiber optic cables are severed by tree roots or nibbled by animals. Phone towers stand useless. Laptops left on desks grow lichen on their keyboards. And your smart fridge. It's just a regular fridge now, one that smells like it's been cursed by 1,000 forgotten leftovers. Without maintenance, dams across the world begin a slow death spiral. Some collapse spectacularly. Others are chewed apart by erosion, wind, or vegetation. When they break, the results are dramatic. Downstream floodplains become lakes. Fish populations shift. Entire ecosystems shuffle their cards. One of the more surreal sights, a herd of elephants, escaped from a once glitzy safari park, crossing the remains of a collapsed freeway overpass. Dust rising around them. Vultures wheeling above. And in the background, the shell of a stadium, now a nesting ground for falcons. And still the earth keeps breathing. Scientists still argue whether human absence would trigger a full-scale ecological renaissance or just a slower, different type of decline. Would the loss of pollinators collapse the food chain? Would invasive species run unchecked? Or would balance return just without applause? The truth is probably somewhere in between. Speaking of invasives, kudzu is going wild in the southern U.S. This climbing vine can grow a foot a day under the right conditions. Without mowing or herbicides, it carpets everything. Street signs vanish. Whole houses become green lumps like sleeping giants. Meanwhile, in Australia, cane toads bounce through abandoned suburbs. In Florida, Burmese pythons stretch across tennis courts. In New Zealand, possums have declared every quiet neighborhood a buffet. And without people to control fire, wildfire seasons grow bolder. Once carefully suppressed flames now burn unchecked. Forests purge the undergrowth that's built up for decades. Towns already half dead get cremated. The ruins cool slowly. Ash fertilizes the soil. Green returns again. Your monuments aren't doing much better. The Statue of Liberty is still standing, but greened over, crusted in guano, and slowly oxidizing. Her arm will probably fall off in the next few centuries. Mount Rushmore grins down blankly, though freeze-thaw cycles are slowly chipping Roosevelt's nose. Concrete highways buckle and break apart. And Stonehenge, still fine. Turns out, rocks are extremely low maintenance. One oddity. The pyramids. Thanks to Egypt's dry climate and impeccable engineering, they'll likely outlast everything else. The Great Pyramid may remain the tallest thing in its vicinity for thousands of years, long after skyscrapers have turned to gravel. Meanwhile, the sea keeps rising. Ice sheets in Greenland and Antarctica, already weakened before your exit, continue their slow melt. Sea levels creep higher. Cities like New Orleans, Amsterdam, and Jakarta are now underwater ruins like Atlantis's cousins. Fringe theory. Alert that a few thinkers have wondered whether Earth itself would enter a more natural glacial period without the heat of human industry. It's hard to say. Scientists still argue whether we've permanently delayed the next ice age or just postponed it with bad behavior. But if the glaciers do return, they'll steamroll everything in their path. And beneath those miles of ancient ice, your buildings will compress, flatten, and vanish. Just more sediment in the geological scrapbook. 10 years gone, and the world hasn't ended. It's just changed the locks. 100 years. That's how long it's been now. A full century since the last human blinked. No echoes remain in the air. No boot prints in the dust. No birthdays, no weddings, no arguments over thermostats. Just time. And trees. Lots and lots of trees. Because that's what this century has become the forest's return tour. In places like the American Midwest, former farmlands have exploded into dense woodlands. Oak, ash, and maple reclaim fields once sculpted by tractors. Fence posts long rotted stand like wooden tombstones in thickets. In Canada, boreal forests expand south. In Europe, wolves are hunting again in the shadow of crumbling cathedrals. You'd barely recognize old suburban neighborhoods. What was once a tidy row of identical houses now looks like an archaeological site, buried beneath moss brambles and 10 feet of pine needles. Roofs have collapsed, floors have disappeared into basements full of water and frogs. Deer walk across sagging rooftops like it's a game of chance. Sometimes they fall through. Sometimes they just keep going. Concrete, which once seemed so eternal, is now fractured and failing. It doesn't rot, but it does crumble, especially when water seeps in, freezes, expands, and pries it apart from the inside. That's been happening for decades now. Skyscrapers. They're mostly gone. The tallest of them snapped or buckled decades ago, their steel skeletons twisted with rust. Their glass, long ago shattered, spilled and was swept away by wind and roots. Cities are no longer places. They're biomes. Historical callback. When Angkor Wat was rediscovered in Cambodia, it had been swallowed almost completely by jungle. Trees cracked through stone towers. Vines clung to the faces of forgotten kings. Entire civilizations vanished under leaf and soil, and no one noticed for centuries. That's happening everywhere now. New York, a swampy tangle of trees and marsh. Bears fish in Central Park. Bison graze where Times Square once blinked. Alligators patrol the flooded subways. And up in some rusted apartment balcony, a cherry tomato plant grows wild from a split plastic pot still blooming red. In London, foxes sleep in what used to be Parliament. Ivy drips down Big Ben. Its hands froze long ago at some random hour, maybe 2:17. In Tokyo, carp swim through intersections during the rainy season. In Paris, the Eiffel Tower still stands mostly, but it's riddled with corrosion. Someday it'll fall with the dignity of a rusted sword. Wildlife has filled the vacuum left behind. Elk return to Poland. Jaguars roam through abandoned towns in Argentina. In California, grizzly bears once hunted to extinction have slowly wandered back in from the north. Without fences or highways to divide them, migration patterns change. Species once confined to national parks now have free rein. And without streetlights or fireworks or leaf blowers, animal behavior shifts in curious ways. Birdsong has grown louder, more elaborate. Without the hum of traffic or the shriek of sirens, mating calls now echo for miles. Some birds evolve entirely new melodies. And bats, freed from artificial light, reclaim the skies with chaotic grace. There's a fringe hypothesis that urban animals might evolve into entirely new species. City raccoons becoming hyper-raccoons, adapted to glass and concrete scavenging with freakish dexterity. Scientists still argue whether 100 years is enough for that level of change. But one thing's certain, evolution's engine never stopped. Even plants have gotten weird. Hybrid species emerge from forgotten gardens. Lavender fields once harvested for cosmetics have spread like wildfire. Thorny rose variants now run rampant, climbing what's left of old shopping centers. And invasive species have formed uneasy truces with native flora. Some areas are overrun with kudzu, others with Himalayan balsam. The war for light and soil rages quietly petal against root. Plastic, however, remains. Your toothbrush is still here. So is your first debit card, a Barbie doll, and 1,000 flip-flops scattered across coastlines. In some places, biodegradable attempts are breaking down, but slowly fragile gestures from a civilization that vanished too fast. Inside buried landfills, banana peels have long since dissolved, but the diapers, they're still here. Some of them are fused with VHS tapes. chicken bones, and unread copies of your gym membership contract. And speaking of buried things, coffins remain sealed in dry soil. Skulls shift underground. In cities where cemeteries were layered on top of each other, the past begins to poke back through. Bones mingle with roots. Tree trunks twist through rib cages. It's macabre. It's natural. Elsewhere buildings, long since collapsed, have become hills covered in soil grass and wildflowers. You wouldn't know there was anything beneath unless you dug. And no one's digging. In a once famous museum, maybe the Louvre or the Met, a mummified sarcophagus lies cracked open, exposed to the elements. Rain pours in through the shattered ceiling. The linen wrappings dissolve slowly until only bones remain as anonymous as yours. Meanwhile, the oceans are changing. Whale populations recover slowly. Tuna begin to rebound. Coral reefs regenerate where temperatures allow. Microplastic is still a problem. Fish still carry your legacy in their stomachs, but the pressure has eased. Noise pollution is gone. Sonar is silent. Whales can sing to each other across entire oceans now. And somewhere, a blue whale, larger than any creature on land, glides beneath ice floes in total peace. You'd be amazed how well Earth gets on without you. Lightning still strikes. Volcanoes still erupt. Rain falls. The moon tugs at the tides. Seasons shuffle past in their usual quiet rotation. And no one complains about Mondays. Somewhere in the Midwest, an old drive-in movie theater screen still stands tilted. A hawk perches on top. Below, wildflowers sway in rows once meant for parked cars. There's no popcorn. Just silence. 100 years is long enough to forget your face, your name, your playlists. But the forest remembers where the streets were. The birds remember your balconies. And the wind somehow still sneaks through the cracks of your old bedroom wall. Let's talk about collapse. Not the sudden apocalyptic kind you'd expect in a movie, but the slow, heavy kind that takes 100 years to finish a sentence. We're now a few centuries in. Cities are indistinct mounds beneath forests. Roads are just shadows beneath the undergrowth. The things you once thought permanent, bridges, dams, towers, or bones, scattered across a wild and wordless world. Take the Hoover Dam, for example. For over a century after your disappearance, it stood its ground holding back the Colorado River with the same stubborn pride it had since the 1930s. But now it's crumbling. Concrete doesn't last forever, even if you poured it thick enough to survive a direct nuclear blast. Rain, wind, sediment build up, and the constant pressure of water wear it down, slowly, patiently, the kind of patience only a river understands. Eventually, cracks form, then leaks. Then one day it gives way, not with an explosion, more like a groan, a shrug. Millions of gallons surge downstream in a slow-moving wall, filling desert valleys, drowning ghost towns, carving new riverbeds. Lake Mead vanishes in days. Las Vegas, already abandoned, gets baptized, and no one tweets about it. Dubai, once a gleaming desert fantasy, fares no better. Its towers collapse from the top-down glass panes, long-gone interiors, gutted by sand. Dunes reclaim the city inch by inch. Burj Khalifa, once the tallest structure ever built, stands like a snapped antenna against the sky. The desert is patient. It was here before you. It'll be here after. Do you remember underground cities? Subterranean train networks, parking structures, malls beneath malls. Most of them are flooded now. moldy, silent aquifers of old commerce. In Montreal, water laps at signage in a forgotten metro tunnel. In Singapore, tree roots punch through high-tech barriers like tofu. Subway rats are gone, replaced by frogs, fish, and slow-growing algae. Museums have collapsed. Libraries, too. Paper didn't last. Digital archives. Useless without power, and magnetic drives have long since decayed. Bits turned to noise. Code turned to gibberish. The sum of human knowledge, once crammed into clouds and servers, is now a smear of forgotten signals. There is no record of your music, your movies, your memes. Historical footnote. Even the Library of Alexandria, one of the greatest knowledge hubs of the ancient world, went up in smoke. Today, scholars still argue whether it burned in a single fire or gradually over centuries. Either way, most of it's gone, just like your cloud backup. But Earth doesn't miss data. It measures time in layers, not likes, and the layers are piling up. In the fossil record, you've left a mark, a dark, strange line of plastics, concrete, radioactive isotopes, and chicken bones. Yes, chickens. The broiler chicken, selectively bred to unnatural proportions, has become the defining fossil of the Anthropocene. Future geologists, if any exist, might puzzle over the sudden abundance of identical bird skeletons all over the world. Maybe they'll call it the era of the Great Cluck. Meanwhile, buildings continue their slow deaths. The Pantheon in Rome holds up better than any modern skyscraper. Thanks to Roman concrete, its mix of volcanic ash and seawater has endured for millennia. Go figure. Engineers today still study it, trying to reverse engineer the secret. But even that won't last forever. Every metal bolt, every steel beam, every aluminum frame corrodes. Water and oxygen are relentless. And plants, especially trees, get stronger. Their roots crush marble. Their trunks split brick. Their seeds sneak into the tiniest cracks and grow into battering rams. There's a fringe architectural concept known as ruin value, the idea that structures should be designed to look majestic even as they decay. Hitler actually commissioned buildings with this in mind, believing future generations should admire their ruins. Whether that idea was ever noble or just narcissistic, it turns out most modern architecture doesn't age well. Steel rusts, glass vanishes, drywall, don't ask. But stone holds on. The pyramids are still here. So are the moai of Easter Island, half buried but defiant. Stonehenge shrugs at the centuries. The Great Wall of China has sagged, but pieces remain like the spine of a buried serpent across the hills. Mount Rushmore. Still grinning, though Jefferson's chin has eroded to something more Picasso than presidential. And below the surface, Earth is stirring. Tectonic plates shift. Mountains rise, fold, and fall. Volcanoes awaken. Earthquakes turn whole valleys into lakes. The San Andreas Fault stretches its shoulders. A small island in the Pacific sinks beneath rising seas, while another forms from a seafloor eruption. In Iceland, a new volcano erupts where a shopping mall used to be. Lava swallows the parking lot. Black glass cools over the bones of a McDonald's fryer station. Fringe theorists once claimed Earth was overdue for a supervolcano, something like Yellowstone blowing its lid. Scientists still argue whether it was ever truly overdue, but now there's no one to prepare. No warnings, no evacuations, just the slow pressure of magma beneath old foundations. Skies change, clouds drift unjudged, Rain falls on rust. Lightning strikes trees that were once part of your IKEA dining set. And no one asks the weather app if it'll be sunny tomorrow. But somewhere, maybe deep in the Amazon or the heart of the Siberian wilderness, a species of monkey is learning how to use tools again. Cracking nuts with stones, fishing ants with sticks. The same old story starting over. What comes next, nobody's watching. But the planet spins on unconcerned. The dome has cracked. The dams are gone. The lights are out. And still the wildflowers bloom. 1,000 years. That's how far we've come now. A full millennium since the last light switch was flipped, the last tweet sent, the last selfie snapped. And in all that time, Earth hasn't paused not once. It hasn't needed your permission to move forward. Your cities. They're no longer ruins. They're geological features. Hills, mounds, oddly symmetrical ridges covered in soil, trees, and sediment. A curious species might walk over them one day, scratching its head, wondering why the rocks are shaped like rectangles. Nature has done its work. But time, that's the real sculptor here. All that glass, steel, and concrete you left behind, it's nearly gone. Concrete especially has suffered under centuries of erosion. Temperature swings, water infiltration, and freeze-thaw cycles. And steel rusted to ribbons. Entire skyscrapers have folded into themselves like rotten mushrooms. Malls collapsed decades ago. Suburbs vanished, choked by trees and turned to mulch. Nature has fully digested your architecture. It's composted the Anthropocene. Now, moss grows atop buried microwave ovens. Ferns sprout from old toilets. Tree roots have turned couches into bizarre mossy mounds. Some branches still clutch plastic remnants like soda rings, or shampoo bottles encased in bark like tumors from another age. And yet some materials persist. Plastic hasn't gone away. It's just scattered. In fragments, in sediments, in fish, in ice, even in the soil where worms have learned to weave around it. Microscopic threads of polyethylene drift in the wind like ghost pollen. In the fossil record, this era now has a name: the plastic horizon. Thin but global. Artificial but unmistakable. Remember that sandwich bag you used once in 2023? It's still here. Possibly in 3 pieces now, but still clinging to existence like the world's saddest monument. But nature isn't just enduring, it's evolved. Coral reefs bleached and broken before you left have made a comeback. In places where the oceans cooled and stabilized, life returned. Not the same life, new life. Coral that glows different colors. Fish with new behaviors. Jellyfish with thicker bells to better ride the currents in less predictable seas. Fringe speculation once claimed jellyfish could be the dominant species in a post-human ocean. And now, well, they're everywhere. Some bloom in vast swarms undisturbed by boats or sonar. Others drift into strange patterns, glowing softly beneath the moon, like living constellations no one names. On land, the forests have grown tall and confident. The Amazon has mostly regrown, though, patchy and changed. Trees with deeper roots dominate, more resistant to droughts. In North America, great forests stretch unbroken for hundreds of miles, reclaiming territory from long-dead farmland and abandoned cities. Redwood saplings planted in the 21st century now tower over the landscape, ancient and unaware. The animals, they've adapted too. Bears, wolves, and big cats now occupy ecological roles left vacant. In some areas, elephants have become the engineers of new ecosystems. knocking over weakened structures, carving paths through overgrown ruins, uprooting old fences. You can almost hear them sigh with satisfaction, finally left alone. Some descendants of domesticated animals have gone truly wild. Cattle now resemble ancient aurochs, massive, horned, and quick to charge. Pigeons have diverged into new subspecies, some forest-dwelling, others adapted to cliffs that used to be skyscrapers. Even rats, once dependent on your scraps, have found new homes in wild grasses, surviving on seeds and insects. And then there are the insects, the quiet winners of the world. Beetles thrive in rotting wood and old plastic. Termites expand their territories, building colossal nests in what used to be HVAC ducts. Ants have colonized entire city blocks, their tunnel networks running through buried PVC pipe. They've probably conquered more square footage than any real estate developer ever dreamed of. But perhaps the strangest survivors mold. Without constant cleaning, entire surfaces have become playgrounds for fungi. Mold now dominates interior spaces. It coats tile peels, paint, digests book spines, and grows shaggy carpets of spores across forgotten electronics. Some of it glows faintly in the dark. Some of it smells like vinegar. One colony in a sealed subway tunnel has grown so large and uniform, it may technically be the world's largest living organism. That's your legacy, mushrooms in your Wi-Fi router. Scientists once debated whether fungi would overtake all human environments. They were right, it turns out. They just underestimated how thorough it would be. Even the climate has changed. Sea levels have risen, not catastrophically, but noticeably. Coastlines have shifted inward. Low-lying areas like Bangladesh Venice and the Maldives are underwater memories. River deltas have reconfigured. Some deserts have expanded, others shrunk. Glaciers, where still present, have redrawn the maps in slow, icy strokes. And while there's still no ice age, there are signs of cyclical shifts. Earth has always danced between glacial and interglacial periods. Now, with human emissions long gone, carbon levels are slowly declining, absorbed by regrown forests, sinking into sediment, dissolving into oceans. Somewhere deep in Siberia, permafrost has crept back. There's a fringe theory that Earth has a climate rhythm, and that human interference threw off the beat. With us gone, the melody is returning. Scientists used to argue whether this would lead to a full glacial advance in 10,000 years, or a partial cooling sooner. Now, the Earth just follows its own tempo, uninterrupted. What about the monuments? The pyramids still here, weathered but intact, half buried in sand. The Sphinx's nose, long gone, is now joined by missing ears. The Great Wall of China is now mostly rubble, but visible from the air as a scar across the mountains. Mount Rushmore. Washington's profile has slid off in a rockfall. Teddy Roosevelt is now just a shoulder and some eyebrow. Stonehenge stands, because of course it does. It's basically an accidental sculpture garden, designed to defy time. But most of what you built, glass, steel wire code, is gone. All that's left is stone, bone, and plastic. Your fingerprints frozen in mud. There is no echo of your name, no trace of your culture in song or script. The planet hasn't forgotten you cruelly. It just moved on. 1,000 years without humans. And Earth has never looked more alive. 10,000 years have passed. By now, the world is completely transformed, and not just on the surface. Whole continents have shifted subtly. Rivers have redrawn their courses. Forests have marched across plains and retreated again. Mountains have risen imperceptibly higher. Deserts have wandered, swallowing the skeletons of forgotten cities and then spitting them out again as strange stony islands. If some conscious observer were to look around today, they might never guess that a species like you once covered the planet. You're not gone entirely, but you've been folded into the geology, smoothed over like a typo in the landscape. Almost all of your buildings are gone. Even your monuments have become sediment. Your plastics remain, though, still stubborn, still sitting in the dirt like little reminders. Plastic bottles crushed by glaciers, microbeads in fossilized fish bellies, nylon threads tangled in roots beneath an ancient oak. This is the inheritance you gave the earth, tiny, indigestible ghosts of convenience. But not everything artificial was made to last. Aluminum has corroded. Copper has dissolved into oxides. Most of your electronics, phone servers, satellites have turned to dust. Transistors fused circuits, cracked solder lines oxidized. Whatever you left in the cloud has evaporated. Even languages are gone. Not just spoken, but etched, printed, encoded. Ink faded, paper gone. Hard drives unreadable. And though some stone carvings may survive monuments, tombs, symbols, what they mean is lost. There's no Rosetta Stone for your hashtags. Still, something remains, a layer. Geologists of the distant future, should any intelligent being arise to study the rock, will find it. A thin, strange band in the Earth's crust, rich in carbon compounds, rare earth metals, and artificial radionuclides, sand fused into glass, steel and plastic fused by fire, chicken bones, billions of them, traces of pesticides, synthetic fertilizers, and curious isotopes from nuclear testing. This layer is already being referred to even in your time as the Anthropocene boundary, a mark not of life, but of influence. You didn't last long, but you were loud. 10,000 years ago, humans invented agriculture, settled into villages, domesticated animals, built monuments, told stories. 10,000 years later, the earth has buried those stories again. But life never stopped. New species have emerged. Insects with brighter colors, birds with deeper songs, mammals with longer limbs adapted to wide-open spaces once called highways. Rodents have diversified wildly, some now arboreal, some amphibious. There's even a new kind of mole, long and blind, nesting in the remains of collapsed subway tunnels beneath what was once Berlin. Fringe evolutionary theories once mused about raccoons or pigs developing higher intelligence in the absence of humans. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe it wasn't. Either way, intelligence isn't inevitable. But adaptability is. And raccoons still doing great. Forests now cover most of the former industrial world. Europe is a great green continent again. North America is split by wide rivers, some newly carved. Giant sequoias, untouched for thousands of years, are even taller. Their roots reach into what was once a suburban septic tank. Africa's savannas have expanded again. Lions roam across old railways now overgrown and cracked. Elephants have returned to regions they were once driven from. And in the Congo Basin, some old mining pits have turned into lakes surrounded by dense jungle. The scars of greed transformed into new ecosystems. Historical comparison: Göbekli Tepe, one of the oldest known human-built structures, was hidden for thousands of years under a hill before being rediscovered. It wasn't erased, it was buried, forgotten, then remembered. your entire civilization much the same. Except no one's left to remember. Deep in the ocean, many of your sunken ships have disintegrated, but a few hulking rust reefs remain. Submarine carcasses serve as homes for coral and crustaceans. Oil rigs, now skeletal, host vast swarms of jellyfish and neon fish. Where human hands once extracted resources, life now grows. And the garbage patch, it's still swirling, reduced, diluted, but not gone. Future currents may eventually scatter it completely. Some organisms have adapted to use it. Bacteria that digest plastic once rare are now thriving in some oceanic zones. Even the moon still carries your footprints, untouched unless meteors happen to stir the dust. The flag faded. The landers slowly pitted by micrometeorites, but still standing. Silent witnesses to an extinct ambition. A fringe idea some people clung to was that humans might one day leave Earth for good, colonize Mars, explore the stars, seed other worlds with our DNA. And maybe, just maybe, a few made it. Maybe there are descendants somewhere else looking up at their night sky wondering what happened back home. But here on Earth, the story is over. You've become a brief experiment etched into the sediment, a planetary footnote. The wind still howls through old canyons where once there were cities. The rain still falls in rhythms you once tried to forecast. The tides still rise and fall on shorelines where no one builds sandcastles anymore. And all the while, the Earth keeps spinning, not angry, not mourning, just moving on. 100,000 years. You can't even imagine that much time, not really. 10 decades is history. 10 centuries is myth. But 100,000 years, that's geology. That's the length of time it takes for mountains to shrug rivers, to change course, and stars to shift their place in the sky. And yet here we are. The world doesn't remember you. Not your cities, your technology, or your TikToks. What remains is embedded in the bones of the planet itself, compressed into rock, scattered in microscopic clues. You're now a layer, a whisper, a line in the dirt that says something strange happened here. Even your most massive creations have disappeared. Skyscrapers gone, highways erased. The Hoover Dam is now nothing more than gravel in a distant sediment delta. The Eiffel Tower, a rust vein deep in the soil. Mount Rushmore collapsed decades ago in a slow-motion avalanche. The faces unrecognizable. Nature didn't destroy them out of malice. It just didn't care. Some artifacts remain, but not the kind you'd expect. Not statues or monuments, not technology. Instead, pottery fragments, synthetic compounds, and oddly durable bathtubs. Turns out your old cast-iron tub might last longer than your favorite skyscraper. It's ironic, really, and fossilization has begun. Bones, those from humans who weren't buried in cemeteries but in landslides, caves, or frozen tundra, are slowly turning to stone. A few have fossilized partially. Their surroundings, ash, mud, volcanic rock, did the preserving. Future diggers may one day stumble across them and wonder if you were God's monsters, or something stranger. The continents have shifted. Not dramatically an inch or two here, a fault line lifted there, but enough that the map is different. The Mediterranean has narrowed. The Pacific has grown slightly smaller. Antarctica is colder again, covered in ice like a frosted tomb. Climates have reshuffled. The Sahara has bloomed and dried in cycles. The Amazon has burned, regrown, burned again. Sea levels have risen and fallen. Glaciers have advanced, then receded. The planet's dance continues without rhythm or rush. Fringe scientific theories once predicted that tectonic activity could eventually bury all signs of humanity. Now, it's already begun. Some cities have been subducted. The plates don't care what was on top. Los Angeles slipping toward Alaska. Tokyo slowly drifting westward. The planet is always folding you under like a note passed in class. New species have arrived, evolved, mutated. Some look oddly familiar descendants of pigeons and rats, perhaps. Others are wildly alien. In Australia, a marsupial with leathery wings and echolocation has taken over the role once occupied by owls. In what was once the American South, a burrowing predator has evolved from raccoons, larger, cleverer, with opposable thumbs, still flexing their way through old instincts. Evolution, left to its own devices, doesn't recreate the past. It writes new chapters using old letters. Do you remember the idea of fossil fuels? The oil you extracted, burned, fought wars over. It's long gone, depleted before your disappearance. And now, future organic material, plant matter, animal remains, is starting to form the foundations of the next carbon-rich layers. Future fossil fuels, though, no one may ever burn them. Volcanoes continue their slow graffiti across the surface. Some old cities have been completely buried by ash, new Pompeiis waiting to be discovered. Rainforests have taken root atop them. Their names, their histories, their ambitions, erased by trees and time. But the ocean holds some of your strangest secrets. In the abyssal plains, those deep, lightless regions far beneath the surface, many of your sunken ships and lost satellites have finally collapsed under pressure. But some debris has survived. Titanium fragments, ceramic tiles from spacecraft, nuclear waste barrels still intact. Deep-sea ecosystems have grown around them. Weird, bioluminescent fish pulse through radiation zones unfazed. Bacteria bloom in patterns never seen before. Life finds a way, as they used to say. It just might not be the life you would have wanted. Your artificial satellites are all gone now. The last ones fell decades or centuries ago, streaking across the sky as shooting stars no one watched. Space is quiet again. The orbits are clean. The Kessler syndrome. The chain reaction of orbiting debris never had time to finish its spiral. Gravity handled the cleanup. The only human-made object still potentially intact, the Voyager probes. Still drifting in the blackness. Golden records aboard, whispering your songs to no one in particular. Maybe one day they'll be found. Maybe not. For now, they're just lonely spacecraft in an expanding silence. Back on Earth, the line between natural and artificial is blurred. Some species have adapted to environments created by your absence. A species of fern now thrives in metal-rich soils where batteries once decayed. Certain insects have evolved to digest nylon. There's a coral that builds its structures on microplastic instead of rock. And still some fringe theorists might have whispered, what if humans came back? What if a vault sealed beneath the ice or in orbit preserved you? A DNA sample, a frozen embryo, a seed of your culture. It's a romantic idea. But Earth doesn't wait for resurrection. Scientists of your time once argued over whether Earth would reset after your disappearance, or continue down a new human-altered path. It turns out both were right. The scars remain. The path is altered. But life moves on. The forests no longer follow old property lines. Rivers don't remember your maps. The animals don't avoid malls or highways. The earth has rewilded not as it once was, but as it became when the loudest species finally fell silent. If any future creature digs deep enough, they'll find you. But they won't find your stories. Just fragments, clues, mystery. And for a species obsessed with being remembered, maybe that's the most haunting fate of all. You're now just a rumor in the dirt. It's been 1,000,000 years, give or take. Not a typo. 1,000,000 trips around the sun. Since the last human took a breath, looked at a sunset, or shouted at a printer. A time span so enormous, the planet has rewritten itself twice over. And you've gone quiet like an unfinished sentence at the bottom of a very long, very dusty page. So, what's left? Well, technically not much. Let's start with your cities. They're gone. Utterly. Not collapsed or buried erased. Subducted beneath tectonic plates. Crushed into mineral layers. Worn down to particles indistinguishable from the mountain ranges that once framed them. New mountain ranges now exist where none did before. The Himalayas, ever rising, now tower even higher. The Rockies have changed shape. The Mediterranean has begun closing slowly, pinching itself into a new range of hills and uplifted land. Los Angeles, merged into a new continental curve somewhere along what was once the Pacific Rim. Your monuments have fared no better. The pyramids have eroded into small, oddly regular hills of stone. Mount Rushmore gone. The Eiffel Tower, fully oxidized, atom by atom. The few granite structures you crafted are now split, slumped, or swallowed entirely. But bones remain. Not yours, well, not in any recognizable way. The occasional femur fossilized deep in sediment, maybe. A jawbone embedded in sandstone, a tooth, all disconnected from context. No grave marker, no identity. You're anonymous, now even in stone. But your animals, they've left louder echoes. The domestic chicken. The plump, overbred, feathered meat machine you once mass-produced has become a fossil record superstar. Its bones appear worldwide, uniform, ubiquitous. If someone ever reconstructs your existence, it may be based on chickens or corn. Your monoculture crops left behind pollen traces chemical residues and fossilized kernels embedded in dry lake beds. Genetically modified, over-optimized, and freakishly stable corn's signature lives uneven where the plants themselves do not. And there's something else, your genetic trail, because life didn't stop evolving. Some of your domesticated species adapted, mutated, diverged. Dogs became something new, some larger, more wolf-like. Others small and adapted to burrowing. Cattle reverted to hardy megafauna in the absence of pens and feedlots. Some birds, freed from cages, adapted to forests that hadn't existed in their ancestors' time. Even crops evolved. Wild offshoots of rice, soybeans, and wheat now grow in patterns no farmer would recognize. Certain weeds, once considered invasive, now dominate entire landscapes. Evolution doesn't honor your favorites. It simply favors what survives. Fringe theorists in your time used to speculate that if given enough time, animals might re-evolve intelligence. Not the kind that builds cities, perhaps, but the kind that shapes tools, communicates in complex symbols, builds culture. 1,000,000 years is enough time for such experiments to begin. And guess what? Some primates have survived smaller, subtler, adapted to their own niches. A species of capuchin monkey has developed rudimentary tool use and a hunting strategy involving sharp sticks. It's not civilization, but it's not random either. and certain caves in what used to be Southeast Asia bones show evidence of repeated fire use, charred remains, cracked shells, arranged stones. It's not human, but it's close enough to make you wonder. Scientists used to argue whether intelligence was an evolutionary fluke or an inevitable outcome of complexity. Now, there's no one left to argue, but life keeps testing that theory anyway. Meanwhile, the climate has reset. Carbon levels once driven sky high by your industries have returned to pre-industrial norms. Ocean acidity has stabilized. The ozone layer is whole. The planet runs cooler, now edged toward a glacial period. Snowfall has thickened in the north. Ice shelves are creeping outward again inch by inch, one cold sigh at a time. Entire regions are unrecognizable. What was once the Sahara is now a mosaic of arid basins and green bands. The Amazon basin has shifted, flooding some regions and drying others. The Mississippi River has changed course 6 times. Old dams and levees are just bumps in the floodplain. And languages, not even a whisper. No writing has survived. Paper and digital files perished within decades. Stone eroded. Metal corroded. Even carvings in mountain faces have worn smooth. 1,000,000 years of rain, wind, and sun has polished them away. Yet, maybe a fragment remains. Somewhere in a deep cave shielded from moisture and erosion, a ceramic tile with human script survives. A plaque, a warning, a love letter, impossible to translate. The syntax is broken, the alphabet lost, but the presence of design is unmistakable. Something made this, something clever. It's the archaeological equivalent of a half-heard melody, with no words haunting, beautiful, pointless. And beneath the surface, the crust keeps moving. Fault lines grind, volcanoes rise. Entire oceans form and vanish over such immense spans of time that they feel like dreams to the earth itself. Life, however, is wide awake. There are plants that fluoresce under moonlight now, animals that echo locate using frequencies you never heard, biomes that once relied on humans. Gardens, orchards, fisheries have reinvented themselves as wild ecosystems. Some are lush, some are harsh, all are functional, and in all of this, no one remembers your name. But the world is alive, vibrant, and stunning in its resilience, not in spite of your absence, but because of it. You burned bright briefly, and then you were gone. And the earth. It didn't pause. It exhaled. By now, only the strangest, sturdiest remnants of your civilization persist. A twisted satellite dish half buried in volcanic ash. A cracked ceramic tile from a forgotten monument. A perfectly preserved rubber duck wedged into a glacier. A vinyl record warped, but still vaguely readable, lodged in the mud of an ancient riverbed. All of them silent, confusing relics. No one remembers the meaning behind them, but they exist like lost punchlines to jokes no one tells anymore. They're part of the last monuments, those not made by design but by accident. The Mount Rushmore faces. They've crumbled. Washington's nose slid off 10,000 years ago, and now the entire granite outcrop has collapsed under the burden of erosion and time. The great carved expressions once frozen in history are now indistinct stone. Nature has reclaimed their dignity. Jefferson is a pile of rubble. Roosevelt is a mossy ledge. The pyramids, though, still hanging on. Not tall, not sharp, but still there, mounds of stone half buried in shifting sands weathered by a million sunrises. It turns out that if you stack big rocks in a desert, they'll last. They may be mistaken for natural hills now, but the geometry still hints at intention. Then, there's Stonehenge, the ultimate overachiever. Simple, brutal, persistent. The outer stones have toppled, but some still stand weathered and ancient beyond belief. Any creature who finds them might think they're just strange rocks. Or maybe they'll feel that same eerie pull you once did the suspicion that these stones meant something. But your more fragile tributes, obliterated. Statues corroded. Skyscrapers returned to gravel. Museums reduced to soil. Your great cities, New York, London, Beijing, Sao Paulo, are now indistinguishable, from hills and valleys draped in green, crisscrossed by rivers and animal trails. What was once civilization is now ecosystem. Do you remember the Georgia Guidestones? A cryptic granite monument, erected in the 1980s, etched with strange inscriptions in multiple languages about guiding humanity. It was demolished in your final years, but even if it had remained, it wouldn't have survived this long. Granite's tough, but not that tough. Weather plant roots and time don't care about your best-laid commandments. Ironically, your unintentional monuments lasted longer. Landfills are still here compressed into geological layers packed with plastic metal and bones. Future geologists, or whoever's next, will read them like chapters. Here's the layer of diapers and Doritos bags. Here's the layer with batteries and broken smartphones. Here's the era of nuclear testing visible by isotopes no other epoch has ever produced. And maybe someone else is watching now. Not humans, not even close, but something curious, intelligent, and utterly alien. A species that evolved in your long absence, maybe from crows or rats or cephalopods. Something that digs, that questions, that wonders about the strange fossils and buried objects scattered across their world. They may stumble upon a record, literally. A golden disk from the Voyager probe embedded in the ground long after it crashed to Earth during re-entry centuries ago. If they can interpret it, they'll hear your voices. Chuck Berry. Greetings in dozens of languages. The sound of a heartbeat. Or maybe they won't hear any of it. Maybe it'll just look like a pretty plate to hang on the wall. That's the cruel joke of legacy. You don't control how it's received. Scientists used to debate what would last the longest. Your architecture, your literature, your technology, or your waste. It turns out, waste wins. The things you valued least plastic forks, bottle caps, polyester sweaters, outlived your philosophies, your art, your inventions. And yet, not all was lost. Some DNA remains, frozen in seed vaults buried deep in the Arctic. Some of your crops still slumber. In protected caves or tombs, a few gene samples have survived. Not enough to recreate you. Not in full, but enough that a small part of your biology might persist folded into future ecosystems. Wheat with a genetic memory. Mice with human mitochondrial echoes. Orchids that glow faintly in the dark, thanks to a spliced gene you once used in a lab. A quiet legacy. No statues, no empires, just pollen proteins and shadows. And still, Earth spins. Tides continue. Rain falls on hills no one named. Trees shed their leaves and grow again. The seasons march forward in a rhythm older than your entire species. And in a forest that used to be Chicago, a lone bird sings, a call passed down for thousands of generations. It never knew you, but it's here because of you. There's a haunting idea in archaeology called the last light, the last time fire was lit by a now extinct species. For humans, that light went out long ago. The last campfire, the last spark, the last glow on a stone wall. But in the dark that followed, life didn't stop. It adapted. The monuments didn't fall with fanfare. They crumbled quietly under moss and wind, and no one mourned. It's a long shot, but let's say someone shows up, not a survivor, not a long-lost human colony thawed from an Arctic vault, but something entirely other. Visitors from elsewhere. Not angels or ancestors, not little green men, just curious travelers, alien minds, calm, clinical, and bemused by what they find. They don't land in front of the pyramids. Those are barely distinguishable from the surrounding terrain now. They don't notice Stonehenge, just a few toppled rocks among billions. Instead, they find your legacy in stranger places. Microplastics in seabed layers, rare isotopes in fossilized teeth, an unbalanced ratio of chicken bones to any other vertebrate species in the stratigraphy. That's what grabs their attention. They come equipped with sensors, translators, scanners that see beyond the visible. No need for dramatic lights or abduction beams. They don't even step onto the planet. They hover, observe, and ask the same question you used to ask of Neanderthals and trilobites. What were they like, and what do they find? A planet that once hosted an incredibly noisy, fast-burning species, one that modified its environment extensively, left behind synthetic elements, and then vanished. Maybe they find a few artifacts in the right soil layers, a metallic pin, a radiation-stained coin, a fossilized set of headphones fused with a turtle shell, an iPhone screen crystallized in a mineral crust completely unreadable, but shaped too precisely to be natural. Do they puzzle over these like Rosetta Stones, or do they toss them aside like cosmic trash? Maybe, just maybe, they stumble across one of your satellites, not Voyager. That's out there, somewhere between the stars. But something closer. An old weather satellite, its orbit long decayed, half melted during re-entry embedded in a remote mountain slope. Inside, miraculously shielded by accident, a few files survived. A snippet of music, a digital photograph, a fragment of language. They don't understand it, not immediately. But the shape of it is intentional. The pattern, the rhythm, the whisper of symmetry. And in that moment, they realize someone lived here. Someone tried. There's a fringe hypothesis in your time barely considered that if aliens ever visit Earth long after humanity is gone, they might confuse you for a fungal outbreak. After all, your impact was brief, global, and left behind strange organic waste. Scientists still argue whether that's offensive or hilariously accurate. But these visitors are more generous. They don't see a fungus. They see a species that burned bright, made things, changed things, and then faded. They don't mourn you. They don't judge. They don't invade. They just watch. For a few days, maybe weeks, they hover. They scan the oceans. They analyze the atmosphere. They catalog anomalies in carbon layers and nod thoughtfully at the clustered calcium remains of cities long eroded. They notice the resurgence of biodiversity. They're fascinated by the readaptation of feral domestic species. They admire the sheer tenacity of mushrooms, and then they leave. No monuments built, no messages left behind, just a passing interest in the strangest layer of a very old planet. Back on Earth, the creatures never know. Raccoons still rummage in silence. Birds still migrate. The seasons still roll forward like patient waves. And life just keeps going. In the forests, new species are thriving. One with bioluminescent skin that glows softly beneath the trees. Another that communicates in color patterns like a living mood ring. They have no word for human. No memory of war or coffee or traffic jams. But they live in the world you helped shape. Your absence gave them space. Somewhere in what used to be Detroit vines, bloom through the twisted skeleton of a rusted Ferris wheel. On a cracked concrete slab that once hosted concerts, a pair of otters wrestle in a rainwater pool. Overhead, clouds drift untroubled by jet contrails. The earth doesn't ask who ruled it. It only asks who feeds it. You are no longer its master. You're a layer, a moment, a fossil, a chemical whisper. But strangely, in your silence, Earth has become more itself than it ever was before. No applause, no monuments, just peace. It's been so long now that time itself feels like a dream, a rhythm too slow for a heartbeat, too vast for memory. And in all that time, Earth has done something subtle, something you never quite expected. It has completely, effortlessly shrugged you off, not with violence, not with vengeance, just with time. The last man-made structure collapsed thousands of years ago. Its rubble was absorbed into the soil, carried downstream by floodwaters, ground into dust by glaciers. A data center became a hill. A cathedral turned into fertile ground for oak saplings. Even your deepest bunkers, the ones buried beneath mountains, are cracked open by seismic shifts. Their contents scattered, digested, forgotten, and still life dances. Forests are taller now, thicker. Trees you never named grow in places that once bore only steel and sorrow. Insects spin new webs. Fish dart through waterways that flow differently than before. Flowers bloom in colors no human eye has ever seen. Earth didn't just survive without you, it thrived. In the absence of your machines, your wars, your leaf blowers, the balance returned. Predators and prey fell into new rhythms. Ecosystems knit themselves back together. Extinct species, once a thought gone forever, found new footing through evolution or rediscovery. And entirely new forms of life emerged, creatures with translucent skin plants that shimmer in moonlight, fungal networks that stretch from one forest to another, like a whispering internet made of mycelium. Fringe theorists in your era once claimed Earth was a kind of organism, a Gaia, a self-regulating whole. Scientists still argued whether that was just poetic metaphor or a misunderstood system. But now, no one argues. The Earth simply is. And the silence, it's not hollow, it's symphonic. With no artificial noise to drown them out, the world sings its own lullabies. Wind across canyons, rain on stone, the rustle of branches heavy with fruit. The distant splash of a fish returning to the surface. And every now and then something curious happens. An animal, clever, adaptable, does something strange. It picks up a shiny object. It uses a stick to reach something out of reach. It imitates a sound it once heard generations ago, passed down not through language, but through instinct. A spark of behavior, a flicker of potential, a seed of story. It's not civilization, not yet, but it's something. Some future mind, furred, feathered, or scaled, may one day piece together the shape of what came before. Not because it misses you, but because all curious life eventually looks backwards. The past becomes a puzzle. The ruins become riddles. And you become legend. Not accurate, not complete, but myth. Maybe you're remembered as giants. Maybe gods. Maybe cautionary tales scribbled in claw marks or sung in low frequencies underwater. Or maybe you're not remembered at all, and life just moves forward beautifully blind. A world without you doesn't mean a world without wonder. In your absence, the earth has become a sanctuary again. Not utopia. There are still floods, fires, predators, and extinction. But it is alive in a way that doesn't need permission. Nothing is landscaped. Nothing is fenced. The air is clean. The sky vast. The oceans deep and dark and full of secrets. No more pipelines. No more billboards. No more Wi-Fi signals bouncing between towers. Just the hum of the planet uninterrupted. The atmosphere has healed. The ozone is whole. Carbon levels have leveled off. Seasons arrive with predictable grace. Migratory paths have stabilized. Coral reefs once dying now burst with colors unknown to your eyes. You worried about saving the world. You didn't realize it would save itself by letting you go. In the places where cities once sprawled, the soil is rich. Your concrete has broken down into gravel and sand. Your gardens, once confined to pots and patios, now stretch for miles. And your final echoes, those synthetic things you left behind, are almost gone. Plastic has broken down into particles too small to see. Your radioactive signature has mostly faded. Even your most durable alloys have finally surrendered to entropy. You were loud, but not eternal. The earth didn't erase you. It incorporated you. And then it moved on. That's the difference between dominance and belonging. The world was never yours to keep. It was yours to share. You forgot that. But the planet remembered. And now it lives without you. Perfectly. 1 million years. That number lands differently now. No longer a projection, but a reality. Time has sculpted everything you once touched into nothing recognizable. Every structure, every footprint, every word you ever spoke, gone. Even your shadow has faded. But the earth, it's never looked more radiant. Continents have moved not dramatically, but noticeably. The Atlantic has narrowed. Mountain ranges have formed and eroded. Subduction zones have swallowed cities you once called capitals. What was once New York is now a lush coastal jungle. What was Tokyo is submerged beneath a warm inland sea, teeming with iridescent squid. Species have come and gone in cycles you can't name. Some of the great megafauna born in your wake have disappeared, perhaps hunted by newer predators or victims of the same indifferent churn that claimed the trilobites and mammoths before them. But some life forms are thriving in weird, inexplicable ways. There's a cephalopod species in what used to be the Indian Ocean that communicates with shifting pigments, not just camouflage, but language. Warnings, emotions, even what looks like shared memory. They build nothing, but they remember. In pulses of color, in rituals, in rhythm. Could they be the next you? Maybe, or maybe not. Maybe consciousness like yours was a one-time thing, like a rare lightning bolt. The earth doesn't care. It doesn't aim. It allows. There are forests now that stretch unbroken for thousands of miles. Trees taller than redwoods. Fungi networks that span entire ecosystems underground, transferring nutrients and signals. The concept of territory doesn't exist here. No flags, no fences, just growth. interconnected, fluid. Remember your satellites, those few interstellar messengers, the Voyagers. At least one is still traveling. Voyager 1, over 21 billion kilometers from Earth, and counting. In the unfathomable cold between stars, it drifts its golden record, still carrying sounds no one listens to, greetings. In forgotten tongues, the laughter of a baby, a heartbeat. Yours. If it's ever found, it'll be the most eloquent bottle in the cosmic sea. A message not from a dominant race, but a vanished one. A blink, a whisper, a warning, or a lullaby. Meanwhile, the Earth has no need for monuments. It makes its own coral cliffs, volcanic islands, crystalline caves so complex they mimic architecture. All made slowly, perfectly, without urgency. The fossil record now holds your last trace. A sliver of melted glass embedded in sandstone. A twisted piece of titanium alloy lodged in basalt. A skeleton so altered by fossilization that even its DNA has turned to dust. And yet, in the atmosphere, a faint echo remains, an isotope never produced naturally. A timestamp in the clouds. A whisper that says something happened here. There's a scientific term for it now. The anthropomarker. A boundary. A chapter break in the planet's 4.5 billion year biography. You had your paragraph. A short one. Dramatic, a little chaotic, but a part of the story nonetheless. There's no grief, no nostalgia, just a soft exhale. The world is at equilibrium again. Not perfect perfection, doesn't exist in nature, but balanced. Rivers don't flood because of concrete. Forests don't burn because of power lines. Oceans rise and fall, as they always have without buildings to swallow. Life moves at its own pace. Gentle, unhurried. The strange irony, everything you hoped to achieve. Clean air thriving, forests, animals safe in their habitats. Balance came true, just not with you in it. That's the closing note of your legacy. You were the noise, Earth was the melody, and now, in your silence, the harmony has returned. So now, it's quiet, really quiet, and you're still here breathing gently, feeling the hush of a world beyond anything you've ever known. No machines, no schedules, no notifications pinging from a forgotten phone, just time. Time stretching endlessly forward without your footprint. Imagine standing somewhere, maybe on a hill that used to be a building, watching deer move quietly through grass that's taller than a man ever was. A sky so clear stars hang like lanterns, brighter than city eyes have seen in millennia. The wind rustles through leaves above, and something primal in your bones recognizes the sound. It's old, soothing, true. This isn't meant to sadden you. It's not even meant to warn you. It's just a story, one told by the planet in your absence. A bedtime tale from the future. And now, your breath slows. Your limbs sink deeper into rest. Your mind drifts through forest, through ocean, through starlight. The earth keeps spinning, steady and silent, a lullaby of tectonic grace. No one remembers your name, but the wind still carries your shape. The soil still holds your heat, and the sea, somewhere deep beneath its surface, still echoes with the memory of your first sail. Good night. Sweet dreams.